Hello and welcome to our second Facebook Live Q&A. Thank you for joining us this Tuesday evening. I know we're up against Couples Come Dine With Me on Channel 4, and whilst Pointless starts in 15 minutes, please do stick with us. Thank you to everyone who has emailed the Council with your questions over the last week, and we hope to cover as many of these questions as possible, as well as taking live questions from the comments, which we'll hope to sort of pop into the conversation as much as possible. I think it's fair to say that we've had probably 3 hours worth of questions in advance. So if we don't get to your question, we'll try to answer your question over email, in the comments, or at the next live question and answer session. I'd also like to say thanks to everyone taking part today, who will help answer your questions, including our guest from the Federation of Small Businesses, Carolyn Frank, who is with us here to address more questions from the city's business community and topics regarding York's economic recovery, as well as many of the other topics and questions that have been coming in. A quick update from York, and thanks firstly to the 4,000 volunteers that have registered with the Council's volunteering system. Just thank you to everyone who is doing something extra for their family, friends, neighbours and communities. I know an awful lot of it goes unseen, but we are incredibly thankful to everything everyone is doing. And secondly, staying safe. Google mobility data continues to show that York is one of the best cities for staying home and avoiding unessential trips. And so it's even more important as we continue through these coming weeks, and I know the weather's supposed to be brilliant tomorrow, that we do what we can to help keep down the spread of the virus and protect the vulnerable and the services they need. Thirdly, the COVID-19 helpline is absolutely still there and will continue operating for many, many weeks and months to come. So if ever you, yourself, or someone you know is in need of extra support, who may be sheltering or on their own, please do contact the Council. You can do that by emailing covid19help@york.gov.uk or telephone 01904 551550. Finally, business support. The Council has moved incredibly swiftly to deliver over £100 million in support. We developed our own £1 million grant scheme to help those falling through the gaps. We've promoted those businesses able to trade, both in online and in paper form, through people's letterboxes. And we've successfully lobbied the government to support over 12,000 self-employed residents. We know there's always more to be done, and we're continuing to work to reach those who have not yet applied or are awaiting their grants. We are fortunate, and always have been fortunate in York, to have the most independent and creative businesses in the country that have always been in York or have chosen York as their home in recent years. And we're keen to make sure that in the coming weeks and months, the talents and expertise of the business community can be fed into the city's recovery planning, which I hope we'll hear more about this evening. Before we dive straight into the questions, both pre-submitted and live, if we could just swiftly go around the panel, and if every panel member could introduce themselves so residents could see who's taking today's questions. And I'll go first. So I'm Councillor Daryl Smalley. I have the privilege to be Ward Councillor for Rawcliffe and Clifton Without, and I'm also on the executive as the member for Culture, Leisure and Communities. Andrew.
Councillor Andrew Waller, executive member for Economy and Strategic Planning and ward member for Westfield.
And Denise.
I'm Councillor Denise Craghill, and I'm Executive Member for Housing and Safer Neighbourhoods, and I'm Ward Councillor for Guildhall Ward, which is the city centre and some surrounding areas.
Maybe Carolyn?
Hi, I'm Carolyn Frank. I'm the Development Manager for York and North Yorkshire for the Federation of Small Businesses. We are basically a grassroots campaigning organisation, but we also offer a range of vital services to businesses, including advice, financial support, and a powerful voice in government. And I'm delighted to be invited tonight to join with City of York. We've worked in partnership during the corona crisis and will continue to do so for your businesses.
Brilliant, and thank you ever so much once again for coming, Carolyn. Neil.
Yeah, so I'm Neil Ferris. I'm the Corporate Director for Economy and Place, and I work under the direction of members to provide the built environment for the City of York and also facilitate the economic activity that happens within that.
And last but not least, Sharon.
Hello there, I'm Sharon Stoltz. I'm Director of Public Health, and I have responsibilities for the health and well-being of the population of York.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So hopefully that gives everyone some idea of who we are and what we do, both usually and through the crisis. And we'll move straight on to our pre-submitted questions. And yeah, as ever, please do comment and feedback. And if possible, and if we can, we'll absolutely feed your live comment straight into our discussion today. The first one is on air quality, and it's from Lindsay, who says, in light of evidence showing that there are links between the spread of the virus and air pollution, please could you confirm what measures City York Council will be putting in place to ensure York tackles the issue of air pollution and climate change? What additional changes will be made to those plans already in place prior to the outbreak? And it says, please don't increase cycle lanes, that isn't enough. Perhaps Neil, do you want to sort of go in first on that?
Well, I think obviously we operate within a national government framework, and DfT have been issuing guidance on how we might come out of lockdown, as it were, and capture the benefits of the improved air quality that has been seen throughout the country and globally. York was a leader in air quality improvement. We're the first voluntary clean air zone in the country, introduced last year and supported by members of this administration with £1.2 million towards that. Obviously, we want to try and capture that as we come out of lockdown. So we're working, as are many other authorities up and down the country, to make sure that York does capture those benefits. And there will be a range of measures introduced, I think, over the next 2 to 3 months that will both improve the air quality, endeavour to improve the air quality of York in the long term, but also to facilitate the economic recovery whilst maintaining social distancing, because I think that's obviously a key message for us all tonight, is that social distancing and public health remains a priority.
Brilliant, thank you, Neil. I don't know, Sharon, did you want to come in there?
Yes, just to add really that there is limited evidence that air pollution helps the spread of COVID. There's a lot that we still don't know about the virus. There's research that is ongoing. What is clear, though, is that there is a link between high levels of air pollution and deaths from coronavirus. This is likely to be because people living in high pollution areas are more likely already to be experiencing some of the impacts of that. And so that can particularly impact on heart health, lung health, and can have an impact on people's immune systems. So because we know there is this link between air pollution and poor health generally, not just to coronavirus, it's fantastic that York is really focused on I'm putting in place measures to tackle air quality, and I'm really pleased to see that that work is going to continue.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sharon. I mean, not to, unless anyone else wants to jump in. Oh, Denise, yes, do you want to say? Just unmute.
Sorry, a bit slow there. Yes, I just wanted to add, I think when the question was read out, it was just a slip that the questioner did say, please don't just increase cycle lanes. And I think, you know, it is important that we are going to have to look at how we provide for more people to cycle and to walk, and that we look at other aspects of how we can reduce emissions from transport to improve air quality, because we have a particular problem at the moment in the short term that getting people back onto public transport in large numbers is extremely difficult because of social distancing. So although, you know, we want to do what we can on that as well, we are going to have to be looking at all those measures to try to prevent, you know, an increase in the increase in car journeys, which could have a negative effect. It's going to be difficult, but we are going to have to do what we can to encourage that whole range of different forms of transport that don't pollute.
No, thank you ever so much, Denise. Our next sort of section on the pre-submitted questions. I've been muted there. Our next question sort of concerns testing, and quite understandably we had quite a few questions relating to testing. The first, and I'll probably merge the two and then come to you, Sharon, if that's okay. First from Louise, how far are people travelling to use the testing station on the A59? Was it wise to open the garden centre opposite? And would we know if a mini outbreak occurred from people just popping into the garden centre from the testing station? And then just to feed in one of the questions from Steve, how many coronavirus tests have been carried out each day at the Poppleton Centre since it opened, and how many of those tests proved positive?
Okay, so one of the difficulties we have with the testing site at Poppleton Bar is that it's a commercially run testing centre. So it's part of the national testing programme, the Pillar 2 element of the government's testing programme. And the government have contracted with the commercial sector to deliver that. And so for the testing centre on the A59 in Poppleton, that's it's Deloitte who coordinate the running of that. What that means is that as a council and together with the NHS, we don't have a great deal of information about the throughput of that. So just to explain a little bit about the testing strategy, Pillar 1 is the testing that is done through the NHS and through Public Health England, and Pillar 2 is the testing that is open to key workers and the broader population. So it's the Pillar 2 we're talking about here. So unfortunately, that means that we don't know how many people are accessing that centre. And we don't have any information about the number of tests that are being carried out or what the results of those tests are. We are working on that, and I'm hopeful that some of that information may start to get shared with the council soon, but at the moment I don't have that. In terms then about the garden centre, there really is not any risk to anybody using the garden centre. The testing that's done at the drive-through site is done under very strict controlled conditions. The virus itself is not airborne, it's spread through droplets, so there's a limit to how far those droplets can be spread. And so provided people using the garden centre follow the standard safety advice around maintaining social distancing, catching coughs and sneezes in a tissue, disposing of that safely, and regular hand washing, then there really is no risk to anybody using the garden centre. So we can reassure people on that point.
Thank you very much, Sharon, and that last bit I hope, yeah, like you say, people find reassuring. We'll move on to our third part of the pre-submitted questions, which concerns fibre connectivity. And our first question is from Nick, who says he lives on Holgate Road and runs his small business from home, and he rents an office in Holgate Road. He says, my business cannot function due to the appalling internet connection. You have a website, York Digital City, claiming that you intended to make York one of the top 10 cities in Europe for internet speed. I've consistently asked when my property will be able to operate using fibre broadband. when will you sort this problem for the residents in my area? Neil, I don't suppose, do you mind coming in first on that point? You might just need to be unmuted.
There we go. So we can obviously get back specifically once we, in terms of the details of the caller as to their specific address. But I think in terms of the city's digital ambition, we are one of the most highly connected cities in the country in terms of fibre to house, and we continue to work with ultra fibre broadband to get that rolled out to the rest of the city. We're aiming at about 80% now, and that's due to expand even further. And I can reassure residents that that work continues during lockdown. So utilities, including the fibre companies, are continuing to roll that out. So whilst obviously we need to give a specific answer to the gentleman who's asked the question, we can reassure residents more broadly that the council's ambition to roll out fibre to residents and to businesses, it continues, and it continues through the current crisis in terms of work happening on the street.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Neil. Unless anyone else wants to come in, I'll just sort of wrap up that by, I've got a contact detail there that anyone, Nick or otherwise, can get in touch with digitalcity@york.gov.uk. So please do get in touch. Oh, Carolyn, I can see. Do you want to come in there? There we go.
Just to say, this is something obviously that's been highlighted by the crisis. We know that small businesses in particular need to get online and need to work, even if they have a bricks and mortar premises. They need to be digitally aware and digitally active as well. So it's something that FSB have campaigned on for many years. And as Neil said, that continues throughout the corona crisis. The broadband and mobile data challenge is still there, and we continue to challenge government to meet the universal service obligation on that. Yeah. And I would just encourage businesses who are having difficulties to get in touch with the council, as Neil said, and also to take advantage of a lot of the courses that are available at the moment. So the University of York and ourselves, and there's lots of training out there to get involved with digital marketing for businesses. So if you're not quite online with your business, I would really encourage businesses to do that.
Yeah. If I can add, Councillor Small, I think that the commitment and the level of service that we do offer in York in terms of digital fibre to business and fibre to house could see that being an economic advantage for York going forward. So with the average UK city at 6%, and we're heading, as I said earlier, up to 80%, this could be an economic advantage that we need to exploit in these difficult times.
Yeah. I don't know if we're allowed product placement on here, but I know I've been ordering online in the evenings, especially with York Gin at the moment. So no, it's a brilliant York businesses doing great work online. Our fourth section, unless there's anyone wants to come in, is on public meetings, which I know obviously councillors, members of the public, officers, council officers obviously usually spend quite a lot of time and many evenings sat in public meetings. And although we've had our first executive, and I think planning is on Thursday, we've got a question from Steve on public meetings. And Steve says, when will meetings, virtual if necessary, of the council's audit and scrutiny committees be scheduled to review the financial pressures generated by the health crisis? I might just say a few words on that before anyone else wants to sort of jump in. Obviously, we're currently in discussions with the respective chairs of these committees and the cross-party chairs as well, and are hopeful that meetings of each will take place in early July. However, dates of the meetings are not yet finalised. We have very effective financial controls in place, including regular monitoring of all budgets, and all financial controls remain in place, and the financial impact both of the pandemic itself and the recovery plans will be reported to the executive in the usual way. And I think we'll probably come on a bit further specifically on the finances point rather than public meetings. So if nobody wants to come in.
Just, if I may, Daryl, obviously for those people who are interested, we've got the first live broadcast planning committee this week as well. So that's on Thursday, I think at 10 o'clock. So if those are interested in seeing democracy in action online for the first time in terms of a planning context in York, that's Thursday this week.
Brilliant. I know I'll be tuning in. So that brings us quite nicely onto CYC, that's City of York Council finances, which I think it's pretty clear across the country. Every local authority, every council, be that district, county, unitary or metropolitan borough, everyone is obviously making quite clear in terms of this difficult situation it is, and it's probably brought clearer than ever that councils are responsible for an enormous amount of statutory services, be that adult social care, to bin collections, to the sort of community response. But our first question on this, our first question of many, is from Claire. Claire says, we have a business on the shambles. Last year, the council increased our rent by 10%. Now we have a business that is being closed down by the government. The council have deferred our rent, not cancelled it. We have not deferred our income, and we will never get back what has been lost. If we and so many other businesses are taking this hit, will the council also take the hit and cancel the rent for the businesses that have had no choice but to close? I don't know, Neil, do you mind coming back on that?
Yeah, I can do. So I think what first thing to say is members acted really quickly at the start of this crisis in terms of our own tenants. There is a lot of discussion about the relevance of local authorities owning businesses and the regeneration benefits they can give. I think this is a prime example where a local authority as landlord can respond more quickly and more locally than a national landlord. So we effectively deferred those rent payments for 3 months. Cash flow is obviously very important for private sector businesses. I'm sure Caroline will come in about the cash flow situation. And alongside that, obviously, as you mentioned at the start of the meeting, Councillor Smalley, we've given out £100 million worth of government grants as well to small businesses across the city. However, and again, referring to those essential services that we provide, including the services my teams provide in terms of refuse collection, street cleaning, etc., that we all value so much. Indeed, the important service that Sharon's teams are providing for the city at the moment, they're all funded from revenue streams that come into the council, and that includes business rents. So obviously, whilst we'll continually review and work with businesses, just like businesses, we cannot just forego income, because that income is relied upon to deliver important public services. So that will be reviewed as we come towards the end of the 3-month period. But the delay has hopefully assisted many businesses in York to continue to survive, shall we say, over these first 3 months.
Thank you ever so much, Neil. We've got a Facebook question on this topic, which I'll just come to swiftly. So our next sort of area in terms of finances is from John on Facebook. The request for additional funding of 24 million, could you expand on this regarding loss of revenue and increase of expense? And I'll probably just link in with that another question from Steve that was submitted before, who has asked, following on from today's report in the press, which claimed the council faced a 24 million pounds deficit, could you please provide up-to-date figures confirming, so similar to John, in terms of what additional expenditure the council has incurred as a result of coronavirus, and on what reductions in income has the council suffered in terms of car parking rents, and what savings have been made as a result of suspending the provision of some public services. Now that was quite a lot sort of all thrown at you. So I don't know if Neil, apologies for sort of bombarding you, but do you want to go in first, and then I'll try and pick up a few things.
I can give some headlines. So in terms of the overall position, the council's predicting, and it is a forecast, and I think, just as the Bank of England and the Office of Budget Responsibility haven't got a crystal ball as to determine what the future is going to bring with us all. So these are forecasts. The council's finance team are forecasting at the end of the year a potential 34 million expenditure associated with the coronavirus, and that's a combination of lost revenue and additional expenditure. A significant proportion of that is lost revenue. So we've talked about the 3 months deferral of rent for our tenants. On top of that, the council is receiving only about 5%, or certainly at the peak of the lockdown was only receiving about 5% of its parking revenue on a monthly basis. So we normally have about £500,000 to £600,000 per month in car parking income, and that was dropping down to £5,000 a month. So that was a significant expenditure. And then obviously in terms of additional expenditure, we've had the community hubs that we've established across the city. The council has in effect also supported small businesses with its own additional £1 million small business grant scheme. So there's discretionary spend, there's additional spend to support the most vulnerable in society, and indeed there's lost revenue in there that comes effectively with that together into that forecast of a £24 million forecast deficit, because as I say, it's 34 million in additional expenditure in lost income, but we have received £10 million from central government so far. Okay,
Thank you, Neil. I'll probably go to Carolyn next, if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, just talking about the deferred payments on rent, I mean, that's a big help, obviously, to businesses to have that extra cash flow. We've seen a lot of commercial landlords not giving that. So I think, you know, really, that is a good thing that that's come from the council to your tenants. Obviously, there are still difficulties with cash flow in businesses, and I would just encourage businesses to really look at all support available to them. So not just to look locally at the council, but to look at what else is available out there to keep cash flowing into their business or to get support. There's a very useful tool from Bays. We also have information on our coronavirus hub, which is at our website, and then a link, I think we'll share that in the comments. You know, just to look at every option available to you. So the landlord is the first point of call, obviously, so the businesses are doing that. But there are other options available. And just to remember, of course, that if you are deferring payments, to build that into your continuity planning and your cash flow. We've seen a lot of businesses also defer through the government scheme their VAT payments.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really useful way to help businesses with the deferral. And as I say, something that a lot of commercial landlords haven't done yet.
Brilliant. Thank you, Carolyn. Does anybody else want to come in? Otherwise, I'll go on to the next question, which is from, so we've had a pre-submitted question from Gwen, which is in regard to the press release you made saying you were continuing with your decision to open more community hubs. So the question is, why haven't you stopped this nice to have scheme to ensure statutory services can be delivered? It's probably my area more than anyone else's, but if anyone else wants to come in, please do. Obviously, we acted incredibly quickly as a council to set up. It was 10 to begin with, and then it went to 9 community hubs. Now these were spread far and wide across the city, normally using locations that were already well known as community centres. And this was right in the I think in the stage 5, in the government stage of 5. So, you know, incredible amounts of protection for those volunteers and staff working there, and making sure that we could ring round as many people as possible. Staff and volunteers at the hubs have made 5,500, nearly 6,000 telephone calls to residents checking on their needs, and the government and the healthcare system continually updates almost daily the list of residents on the shielding list. And as well as the checking on their needs and well-being, a lot of them are actually just social calls. You know, it's trying to check up on people on a Monday, Wednesday and Friday that actually people have what they need and can get by. And knowing that the impact of coronavirus on our communities will change, we're always looking to build in and harness the momentum of everyone's community action, be that the 4,000 plus volunteers that signed up to register to volunteer, and the local community action in our villages and communities. I know you'd probably expect that in the immediate response you'd have the sort of spike of need, and it's been gradually going down. And what we've seen really as a council and as a city, that really hasn't been the case. The busiest day for the community hubs in terms of food parcels alone was actually Tuesday last week, where more food parcels were got out than any other single day alone. Now, you know, that's actually 2 weeks into May. You wouldn't necessarily have assumed back in March that had been the case, And we had more calls through to the helpline over the weekend, 9 on Saturday and more on Sunday. And I think that shows that by establishing these hubs for the long term and actually keeping people safe and keeping people at a healthy level so they avoid the sort of crisis situations that we've seen, and by harnessing the power of the brilliant volunteers we've got, actually it helps the whole council system, it helps GPs, it helps the health service, and it helps our city. And I would just say to those medically shielded, I know I've got a parent who's medically shielded, and I think it really did throw quite a lot of people who would never ever think of themselves as vulnerable into the vulnerable category. You know, these are people that go about their daily lives as you would, and then suddenly for the government and to an international pandemic to come and say actually you can't leave the house, yeah, it's quite a difficult scenario, and I'm glad that we've built that support mechanism in place, and we have committed to make sure it will continue in place as long as residents need. I'm aware that was a bit of a speech, so I'll go straight to Denise, who's got your hand.
Thank you. Yes. Well, I just wanted really to support all those points that you've made, but also to say that in a way this reflects back to the previous question about council finances, doesn't it? I just missed my chance to get up my hand then. But I think, obviously a lot of work is being done at the moment, looking at the finances, both the revenue day-to-day budget and our investment budgets. And we do have to think really carefully about what are the right things to invest in to help people as we come out of this crisis. And we are going to have an awful lot of vulnerable people, a lot of people in financial difficulties, a lot of people who will need support. So although this may not be a statutory service in itself, it may be a very key service we will find as we go forward. Hubs, we're going to be linking with existing community grassroots levels as well as we do this, trying to pull all that together. And those hubs have been a lifesaver before all this started, for some people, certainly that I'm aware of. So I think, I think we will be looking very carefully at this, but I think it is very worthwhile to commit to expanding the hubs.
Thank you very much, Denise. Now, our next sort of section is on city centre businesses, but just before that, I don't know, Carolyn, do you want to say perhaps something on business wellbeing? Because I know that's just spoken quite a lot about resident wellbeing. I don't know. That's something.
Yeah, sure. Obviously, a really anxious and stressful time for a lot of business owners, and the message from FSB and certainly from the hard work I've seen the council staff teams putting in is to get in touch. Don't worry alone about your business circumstances, whatever the issue is. It's probably not unique to your business. We work nationally and we see the same problems coming up time and time again. So I would advise any business owners, especially as it's Mental Health Awareness Week this week as well, to be open if they're feeling anxious. Pick up the phone, speak to us. We act across the UK on behalf of all small businesses, not just our members. We do have specific resources as well on our website if business owners are struggling. So please don't be anxious alone if you're a business owner. That's my message.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Carolyn. Now, that segues perfectly onto city centre businesses. Thank you ever so much. And our pre-submitted question is from Simon. And Simon asks, with all the talk of reducing traffic into the centre of York, is there any provision being made for loading bays within the city centre? Currently, there's only one loading bay within the city walls, and this is on Watputmer Gate, which makes it very hard for deliveries after pedestrianisation is implemented each day. I'll probably go, if okay, straight to Neil on that one, and then if anyone else wants to come in, please do.
Okay, just very quickly, there are 2 other timed loading bays within the city walls. They're on Piccadilly and they're timed from 6 AM till 11 AM. And in terms of the Build Back Better initiative, so I talked about that at the head of the meeting, the idea of capturing the good air quality, any initiatives that consider expanding the city centre foot streets will also take account of businesses, because obviously Build Back Better includes a better economic future as well as an environmental future.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Neil. And then another question on city centre businesses, this one from David. Are you going to promote the opening of York City Centre? Because if you don't let the public know that the city centre is open for business and safe, the increase in footfall will be too low. If the footfall does not increase quickly enough, businesses will not survive. It's also just on that, car parks are part of the problem. They should be free at least for 3 months, if not more. It is an incentive for the public to come into the city centre. And then just as a final point from David, a large number of city centre visitors on the buses use the buses, but we are being told by the government to avoid public transport. What is York Council doing to make bus travel easy and safe? Now, again, I'll probably go, if okay, straight to Neil, but if anyone else wants to come in, please.
So just on the car parking, obviously the revenue for that does support a lot of those important services that we talked about earlier. But however, that revenue is only there if the businesses in the city centre are successful. So obviously a key part of any recovery strategy will be a look at the balancing act of reinvigorating the city centre alongside car parking charges that sit in there. That then is the balance that Councillor Craghill talked about earlier about, well, maintaining bus services is important. So the DfT is supporting those bus services, but equally we recognise that people will have an inclination towards moving towards the car in terms of a recovery and their ability to social isolate. So I think in that regard, what we've got to do is where people can use sustainable forms of transport, such as cycling and walking, so particularly the residents of York, we will be looking at additional measures to encourage that. But if also recognising that car will be a form of transport that's needed to help with the economic recovery of the city. And I think that would be my key point there, is that social distancing is going to be a key part of any recovery strategy, and we've got to facilitate that while providing confidence that the city is a good place to go as businesses reopen. So I think it was in our discussions with the Chamber of Commerce and the FSB, the three things that businesses are looking for at the moment are cash flow, which we've talked about, confidence in terms of providing confidence that the city is a safe place to be, and certainty. And we're working with members as to what those measures around the city centre might look like, so that we can give certainty to businesses that when they do reopen, there is an environment that is conducive to being a successful business, recognising the need to social distance and the fears, because a lot of this is about human behaviours and their confidence in coming back to York, and we want to instil that.
Thank you, Neil. Just before I go to Andrew, we've had a Facebook comment from Tom, who I think I might know. Tom says, we need to make the city centre nicer. Part of that is keeping cars out. Stonegate is one of the nicest streets because it is car free and attracts people as a result. Andrew, do you want to come in just now on city centre businesses, and then if anyone wants to pick up on Tom's point? Try and... Yeah,
well, I think it's important to listen to city centre businesses, and I know Carolyn's working with a lot of them, and ensuring that there's confidence in the safety of coming into the city centre and the feel of the city centre. I think there are a lot of businesses that have changed the way they've delivered their services. There is a lot of goodwill to keep them going. So it's about maintaining those connections so that there is the ongoing support from either people who live very close by, or as time develops with the new normal, that people come from slightly further afield and yet feel that it's very much the old city centre that they've always known, but that it will be operating in a different way to ensure their safety, and that the range of services on offer are there. I'm sure there are people who have not stepped into a bank in the last couple of months who would want to do that, to have that socially distance face-to-face contact. But there are some things that cannot be put off. I mean, I'm sure at some point we'll need to go to the dentist, whether we like it or not. And therefore there's a whole range of services that
I think we might have lost Andrew. Has everyone else lost Andrew? Yeah, well, we'll work to get Andrew back. But in the meantime, probably if we move on to the next point, which is on transport, and we've got a pre-submitted question from Gwen, and Gwen asks, when will the Groves scheme be started to stop through traffic? Neil, are you okay to come in on this to begin with?
A quick one. So obviously we undertook a public consultation before the pandemic hit, and officers have been working on the feedback from the public in respect to that public consultation. And what we're envisaging now is that we would feed that consultation back to the members of the public who contributed. But as I've said earlier, the government are looking for initiatives that effectively capture the benefits of a reduced car footprint, and the Groves was a scheme that actually was looking at as an opportunity. So I think what we'll be doing I know we'll be doing with members in the next few weeks is looking at how we accelerate the delivery of the Groves scheme so it can happen this summer, but on the basis of the feedback that we've had from those earlier consultations. The decision that was made by Councillor de Guern before Christmas was that it would be on an experimental basis. So again, I just want to reassure the people of the Groves, this isn't an imposition that's under the cover of the COVID crisis. There is going to be ongoing opportunities for them to contribute into the design of their local area through this proposal, even though we are seeking to capture the benefits, as we say, of the improved air quality in the city.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Neil. I'll just go straight to Denise. Oh, you're muted. I don't know if you... There we go.
Sorry, technical glitch there. Yeah, I just wanted to add very briefly to what Neil said as a ward councillor for that area, that I am getting a steady stream of emails now from residents who have enjoyed the quieter streets and the quieter neighbourhood in the Groves during the recent period and are wanting to know when this is progressing. So they'll be pleased to hear that, but also that there were some specific issues that came up when we had the consultation back in February, quite a big event in the Groves, and that we will be pursuing those specific issues as well in the coming weeks, I believe. So yeah, hopefully it will be a good example of the sort of thing the government has been talking about.
Thank you, Denise. I know I'm enjoying the quieter traffic because you can take photos of potholes without fear of being run over. So it's brilliant. Andrew, you mentioned earlier dentists, and we've had a question on Facebook from Alison. What is the latest on emergency dentists? Now, no, I won't go to you, Andrew, on that, but instead to Sharon, if that's okay.
Yeah, so I've been having lots of queries about dentists. It is something that I know a number of people have been concerned about. So the process, so dentists are closed for routine dental treatment at the moment, and they have been for some weeks now. So if people are in pain, or they think they have a broken filling, or they have a gum infection or something, the advice is to ring their regular dentist first. And their regular dentist should take a history from them and make a judgment as to whether they need urgent dental support. If they do, then they'll be referred to one of the emergency dental hubs. That might mean that they need to travel to one of these emergency dental hubs, but that's the route in. If someone is not normally registered with a dentist, or if it's out of hours, it's over a weekend or a holiday, then the advice is to ring NHS 111, and again they'll be assessed by 111, and if it's decided that they need urgent dental help, then that's another route to be referred on to one of the dental hubs. I know that dentists are preparing for when they can open again for routine treatment, but they're waiting on further government guidance before they're able to do that. But hopefully that won't be too much longer now.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Sharon. And I know we had quite a long, not me, but I know we had quite a long discussion on dentistry in the last live Q&A. So if people wanted to scroll down the Facebook page of City York Council, you'll soon hopefully find that. We've had a comment on Facebook from Paul. So just before we move on to the next topic, Paul asks, any chance of getting green bin collection started soon? Mine's getting pretty full now and we're close to summer. Now, Paul, it's good news that yesterday green bin collection started. If you just go onto the council's website and search green waste, or hopefully it is easier to navigate, you'll find the schedule, and hopefully if you pop in your postcode, it should be able to tell you when you're due for a collection. So hopefully we've solved that for you. Moving on to the next one, which is on housing. Shani asks, when will mutual exchanges be going ahead? I'm hoping Denise, as someone who will know far more than I will on housing.
Yeah, thank you. Mutual exchanges haven't been happening during the lockdown period. Officers have really been focusing only on urgent and emergency moves during lockdown, largely because of the public health aspects, and also because they've had to focus a lot of their work on emergency work to house people who are priority emergency needs. But we are now looking at how we can bring back in mutual exchanges, transfers, and in fact move back to the North Yorkshire Home Choice system in general. So there would be the potential for more movement. The government has just brought out further guidelines on house moves. So obviously we're looking at that. That just came out yesterday, and we'll be looking at how we use that. Mutual exchanges are quite challenging in terms of social distancing and doing it safely, because people are actually occupying the properties. They're not empty properties, so that does make it a little bit more difficult, but that's being worked on as we speak by officers, and we'll be able to tell you more about that in the next week or two.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Denise. We've only got, sadly, 10 minutes left, although I could go on all night if the internet connection lasts. Our next topic is care homes, and we've had a question in advance from Gwen, and Gwen asks, how many care homes in York are there? Of those, how many have had COVID-19 infections? And of those, how many residents have sadly died? Sharon, I'm aware you might not be to offhand answer all of that, but if you could just give that. Brilliant.
Yeah. So thank you, Gwen, for the question. So we have 37 registered care homes in York, and of those, 22 have had COVID infection since the start of the outbreak, which is just over 60% of our care homes. However, I'm pleased to say that because of the additional support that's going into care homes, both from community NHS services, infection control, GP support, etc., that we haven't had any new outbreaks since the 7th of May. So there's certainly been an improvement there. Up to the 5th of May, we have had 122 deaths from confirmed or suspected COVID in York, and 55 of those deaths have been in the community, including care homes. So despite all of the work that's going on, care homes and care settings continue to be a priority for us across the health and social care system. And we're pleased that the government recently issued new guidance on whole of care testing, which will also help us to be able to ensure that residents who are in care homes are safe from infection. So that work is ongoing.
Thank you, Sharon. And I know all our hearts go out to everyone affected and the relatives of those affected in those settings. And I guess it's good news in some way that we've not had any more cases for quite a while in those settings. I've just been reminded on green bins that were raised earlier, that if your green bin is missed on the day it was supposed to be collected, if you leave it out, and the council will seek to collect it at the next available opportunity, and that could be Saturday mornings. And just a reminder that if you could please not put out additional bags and rather wait for the next collection, as it will slow the crews down and mean that other houses might not get collected. We'll move quickly, aware that we've only got 8 minutes left. If possible, we'll just very quickly go on to another public health area, and that is suicide. Gwen asks, I keep hearing suicides and attempted suicides are really bad across the country and locally. What is the situation in York versus last year, and a request for numbers if possible. Sorry again to go straight to Sharon, but yeah, if you wouldn't
mind. I mean, this is another really important public health issue for us in York, and I'm pleased to see a question about this to highlight it. So one of the difficulties we've got with good data from suicide and attempted suicides is that there's quite a time lag with the data with this. So the most recent data that I've got is for the period between 2017 and 2020, where there were 67 York residents who sadly took their own lives. 27 of those were in 2019. So that would appear to indicate that we saw a bit of an increase last year. However, that was before the pandemic started, so it won't have been directly linked to the additional pressures that we've seen over the last few months related to coronavirus. Data around attempted suicides is even more difficult because we don't always find out who's attempted suicide. If somebody needs to be admitted into hospital, that hospital visit might be categorized for some other reason. So we are working with the police and with other blue light services to try and capture real-time information around attempted suicide so that we can make sure that we're providing the right support to those individuals. What I would say, referring back to some of the comments earlier from Caroline about business, obviously there is a lot of support that's available for people in the community who are suffering mental distress. This is Mental Health Awareness Week. And one good source of information is York CVS. They have a mental health directory on their website that has lots of information about local sources of support. Or people can contact the council's coronavirus helpline, and we will certainly signpost them in the right direction. So just that plea really, that if anybody is experiencing difficulties and they are experiencing suicidal thoughts, to seek help. You know, don't suffer in silence, but to seek help.
Thank you, Sharon, and I think that was very, very well said. Our final section, where we've only got 4 minutes left, is on disability services, and we've been reminded by Alison about this question. So Alison said in advance, the word disabled did not feature in your leaflet. Are you aware that the disabled, physical and learning, adults, young people and children are suffering more than any group in the city? Because we are hidden, it is easy to overlook us. What extra provision have you put in place? What extra services have you commissioned from providers? Aware that we're sort of rapidly running out of time, would you mind sort of jumping in on this? Yeah, Denise, is that okay?
Okay, I'll try to be quick. We are aware that physically and learning disabled people and their families are under quite a lot of pressure at the moment. So our teams have been ringing round very proactively in adult social care to lists of people we know have learning disabilities, but also in other departments as well. We have been proactively ringing people to offer support, and we'd also urge anyone who feels they might still have been missed out of that to get in touch, ring 551 550 and ask for help, as Sharon just said as well. There are some examples of some good things we've been doing to try to support people whose activities have had to be closed down, for example, who are not able to attend sessions together. So we've been sending out activity boxes, delivering them to doorsteps, had weekly Zoom sessions to keep people involved. There's even been exercise classes happening, as well as regular telephone calls. A meal service has also been launched, socially distanced welfare chat to make sure people are okay. Socially distanced walks are now being looked at as we start moving out of lockdown. So there is a lot of effort going on to try to support people.
Thank you ever so much, Denise. We've got 2 minutes left, and I know we've always reached this point far too quickly. It only feels like 2 minutes ago that we all logged on. I guess thank you ever so much to everyone, especially who's been watching, and thanks to Andrew, Sharon, Denise, Neil and Carolyn. I guess because we have a couple of minutes, Carolyn, did you want to, is there any sort of last remarks that you wanted to make, especially to, I know, the business community, that I know we've gone through a few of the tough situations from broadband to city centre access. I don't know, did you want to say any sort of final few words to any businesses out there that might need help?
I think just to reiterate the points that have come through in the discussion really is that businesses should get in touch, because we're working in partnership across the city, you know, not just with the council, but with Make It York, with the chambers, with all our partners around to try and put solutions in place for economic recovery. And we know that businesses want to get back to work and start trading, but they want to do that in a safe and controlled way. So it would be really good to have feedback from them about what we can do to help facilitate that. And, you know, what do they really want now for the city centre? And we're putting in place a series of roundtables across the city where we'll be collecting that sort of evidence. But even if you don't take part in a roundtable, let us know. Tell us what issues you're struggling with, because then we can put them right. And, you know, really is a collaborative effort, and from business, from the council, from membership organisations like ourselves and Make It York. And the support is out there. So do look for the support, but also raise your issues with us so that we can put solutions in place working alongside you as a business.
Brilliant. Thank you, Carolyn. Thanks to everyone who's joined us both on the panel and on Facebook. And you know, it's been, I think, hopefully it's been useful. And firstly, sorry for those questions that both pre-submitted and live that we couldn't quite get round to answering. You always get in touch with us, either personally, our details are all online, or the council. And hopefully the brilliant comms team of City of York Council will be going through the Facebook comments, and if there's any quick questions that we can answer on Facebook, they'll be doing so. Look out for more of these. Hopefully we'll do more in the coming weeks, and it's only right that we should sit here and answer questions whilst, you know, the public meetings can't go ahead, and hopefully actually in the future. I don't know, I probably don't speak for all our guests, but I'm happy to do these as often as we can over the coming weeks. And a final remark, really, that hopefully sums up some of our discussion, is the helpline and the council will always be there for the coming weeks, months, and whatever happens throughout this crisis. Whatever the government announce at 6 o'clock, we'll be there to help you, be it with food, support, well-being, or any other advice we can give. Always ring on 01904 551550, or do email at covid19help@york.gov.uk. And 7 days a week, quite often through late into the evening, there'll be council staff there ready and waiting to help you, as well as some of our volunteers. So thank you ever so much for those people who've joined us, and I hope we've gone some way to answer some of your questions, and if not, we'll be back to answer even more. Thank you ever so much.